Welcome to the Financial Coaches Podcast, where we talk about how to build your practice from startup to scale up while being the kind of coach your clients crave. Finally, a podcast for financial coaches. Here are your hosts, Maria Casillas and Cody Sizemore.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Financial Coaches Podcast. I'm Maria Casillas, and I'm joined here by my incredible co-host, Cody Sizemore. We are excited today to come and talk to you about some really tangible things that you're going to be able to take away from this particular episode. But before we do that, I just want to give you a quick reminder that we have officially launched our Getting Started as a Financial Coach course, and we invite you to come and join us for that free webinar. Now, before you say, well, I already know how to become a financial coach because I'm listening to this podcast, listen, there is so much more that you can do that you don't already know. And so we want to invite you to at least find out what's in there. Do that by going to our show notes and clicking on the link, figuring out how to get to that free webinar, and then you'll see what we have to offer. So I also wanted to say thank you again for joining us today. And every week that you've been joining us, we've been seeing our numbers grow in our Facebook group. And that's been really exciting. Some people are asking some really great questions there. And we are starting to bring content to you from those questions. And today is no exception to that. So I'd like to jump in. First, I'm going to ask Cody, how you doing today, Cody?
I'm doing good.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. I caught you right in the middle.
Ups and downs, but that's part of the journey.
Oh yeah. So, well, that's life, right? I mean, we all have those things, and I'm sorry that your ups and downs are coming to you, but I'm glad that you're going to work through them because you always do, for sure.
Every time.
So yeah. So today, I think what would be a really fun thing to talk about is certain exercises that we like to do with our clients. Now, if we may, I'm actually going to just make this one all about you, Cody, and have you share a couple of the exercises that you like to do with your clients. And then maybe next week we can jump in and I can do a couple of the ones that I like to do.
All right. Well, I'm going to hold you to it.
Thank you. I hope so.
Yeah. I would love to talk about this because I think that when there's a new coach or, someone who's like thinking about getting into coaching, I think that there's a really big misconception that all coaching is focused on just the numbers, So, and obviously financial coaching, that's a huge part of it, but I have found that some of the most impactful parts of coaching don't really talk about the numbers. It talks about the people behind the numbers, So if I had to narrow things down, because I have a lot of different exercises that I do, and it just kind of depends on the person. Like there's some that I do with everyone, and then there's some that I'll do with like some people, and then some that I'll do with another type of person. So there's a lot. But if I had to narrow it down, I think that I would like to unpack two of them.
Okay.
And one of them is actually something that we've talked about on this show, but it was a long time ago. In fact, I think it was like episode number 2. Episode number 3.
I know where this is going, I think.
Yeah. So it was a long time ago. But this is an exercise that I just call like finding your driving why behind it all.
Mm-hmm.
So really focusing on like why they actually want to accomplish certain goals that they're working on, right? So the reason that I love this exercise so much is because we get out of like the budget and we just have a conversation face to face. And, while we're kind of going through this exercise, which I'm going to walk you through and like how I do it, while we're going through it, they're not really understanding what's happening. And then once we're done, I kind of hit them with everything. I'm like, so this is what we found. This is why we did it. And this is how you're going to use it. And after that, they're like, whoa.
Yeah. Awesome.
It's like that came out of nowhere kind of thing,
Those are the best kind of exercises though.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're like getting all this ammunition built up and then you just like unload on them. They're like, what the heck? We're under attack. Like in the best way possible. But yeah, I mean, that's why I think I really like it. And as this is also something that, people can use on a daily basis as well. It's not something that like you just do for 30 minutes in a coaching session over Zoom. No, it's something that you can take and run with for as long as you're on this journey, so it's something that works in people's lives.
And while I haven't heard you break down the exercise yet, I'm betting that it's also something you can use in other areas of your life, not just in the area of personal finance.
100%. Okay. And that's actually something that after I've done it with people, sometimes they will say that. They're like, this was really, really cool. And I almost feel like I want to do this with like this area of my life too. And I'm like, you totally should.
Yeah. Because they're all interconnected, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I'm glad you actually said that, because something that I tell people all the time is I say, hey, listen, money's not everything, but it does affect everything. And everything kind of affects your money too. So it's like, hey, if you can get your health in a really good place, your marriage in a really good place, your career in a really good place, your relationship with your kids in a really good place, like whatever it might be, then chances are that it's going to rise all boats, that rising tide lifts all boats kind of thing. So, yeah. So to break this exercise down, it's really simple. And this is just how I do it. But, if you're like, oh, well, now that I hear what Cody says, I like that, but I might tweak it a little bit. Cool. Make it your own. I don't care. I'm just sharing you what I do. So this is how I do it. I basically open up the conversation and I just tell them how the exercise is going to work. And then I also let them know, once we're done, I'll let you know. And then I'll tell you, what we found, why we did this, and how to use it. And I'll instruct them that this is how we're going to go through this exercise. I'm going to ask you a very simple question. And then you're going to give me an answer. And I'm going to take your answer. I'm going to ask you another question. And then you're going to give me another answer. And then I'm going to take that answer. And I'm going to ask you another question. And we're just going to do that until I feel like stopping. And then I like stop and I look at them and they kind of get this like weird look on their face. And I'm like, oh yeah, right? So, and then I'm like, and that's it. Make sense? And they're like, I think so. And then I just go right into it. Right. So if someone were to, let's just say, for example, a lot of the clients that I work with, not all of them, but a lot of them are trying to get out of debt. Right. So the very simple question that I might ask them at first is like, hey, why is it that you want to become debt free? And then they'll usually give me some like surface level answer, something along the lines of like, oh, I don't want to be stressed out about money anymore. And then I would be like, okay, so you don't want to be stressed out about money, right? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, how come? And then they'll give me another answer and I'll say, okay, so you said this. So I'll pick like probably like the most impactful or meaningful part of their answer. And I'll say something along like, you said this. What did you mean by that? Why is this important to you? What would that look like? Like all those kinds of questions, right? Open-ended questions. It's the type of questions that you want to ask. And then you just keep repeating that process. Now, with every answer that they give me, I pay very, very close attention to the words and phrases that they're saying. And if there's a word that I think sticks out, I'm going to write it down and I'm going to underline it. If there's a phrase that I think sticks out, I'm going to write it down and I'm going to underline it. If they say something in a really simple way, but what they're really trying to say is something different, then I'll write that down too. So if someone's like, I just want to take care of my family because, I never really grew up with much and, I want to change that for them. Right. So that might be something to where I might write down, I want to change my family legacy kind of thing, and I'll basically just make these like little notes of almost like these little nuggets of information that they're giving me. And then once we've gone through enough layers of questions and answers, and I feel like I have enough written down that I can work with, I basically say, okay, cool. I think we're done. I think we're good. Just give me a few minutes to kind of collect my thoughts, and then we'll, explain what this looks like. So in those few minutes, what I would do is I would look at my notes, and I would look at the words or phrases that I underlined. Now, the thing about the way that we ask these questions is we ask the questions based off of their previous answer.
Mm-hmm.
So what that means is, Maria, is that all of those answers and all of the questions are technically connected in some way. So really, any answer that they gave me at any point could have gone back and answered the initial question, why do I want to become debt free? Right? So what I do is I say, okay, I'm going to take all these little nuggets and I'm going to formulate it into one final answer to answer the question, why do I want to become debt free? And usually that's like it could be like a 1-sentence answer. It could be a 2 or 3 sentence answer. But any more than that, it's just too much,
Right.
So, 1 to 3 sentences kind of thing. And then I'll share it back with them and I'll explain to them like, hey, here's how they're all connected. This means this, just like how I just talked to you. And I'll say, just so you know, I'm going to recite this back to you, but this is not my answer for you. This is your answer. I just help put it together. That's all. Right? And then I'll remind them what their first answer was so that they can be like, oh yeah, okay. and then I'll hit them with the actual answer. And then I'll shut up. And I'll just say something like, how does that resonate with you? And almost every time people are like, wow, like you hit it like right on the head. I'm like, yeah, I hit it on the head because you told me it. And sometimes people even cry. It's a very moving exercise. So that's how I kind of do the exercise. Now, before I go into why we do the exercise and how we can use it, anything that you want to say, Maria, because I know I've been yapping.
Oh no, I love it. I'm curious, and I think maybe our listeners are too. What would you say is like an average amount of time that it takes to do this exercise?
So from start to finish of doing the exercise, like asking the questions, creating that, why statement with them, explaining, how we did it, why we do this, and how to actually use it moving forward. It's about 30 minutes.
Okay. All right.
In my experience.
Yeah, no, that's good because I think people, and like you said, it's going to vary based on the client themselves and maybe how you're feeling that day or, what's going on with the internet. There's all these different factors, but I think the people who are listening are wanting to know, like, if it takes me 4 minutes, have I gone too quickly? And if it takes me an hour, am I going too slow? So I love the idea that it's, approximately 30 minutes. I think what I'm intrigued mostly by is the time where you're taking those few minutes to quote unquote, pull your thoughts together. Are you thinking that's like a couple minutes, maybe like 3 to 5? What is the average time for that piece of it?
I think that the first time you do it, it might take a little bit longer.
Okay.
But for me, generally, as I'm like listening to them, I'm already thinking about like things that I could kind of come up with throughout the whole process. So for me, it just takes like a minute.
Okay. And then another question is, what are they doing while you do that? I'm more curious than I am, I am skeptical. I can picture, because I'm assuming most of the people that you're working with are not in person. They're more on the camera, I would imagine.
Yes.
So when you're doing that, are you staying on camera? Are they staying on camera? And what are some of the reactions that you're seeing from them while you're working?
Yeah. So in a one-on-one setting, I will just say, hey, give me a few seconds. I'll stay on camera. I'll stay on I won't like mute myself or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And, if it's a couple, I'll just say, hey, you guys can talk amongst yourselves, whatever you want to do. And if it's a person, I just say, hey, do whatever you want to do. Chill, check Facebook, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
or just sit there and watch me.
Watch me work my magic.
Yeah. Now, in a group setting, when I'm in my group program, I will actually tell people, I'm going to collect my thoughts here, and I need probably just like 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. So for the next 2 minutes, I'm going to go off camera, and while I'm off camera, I want you guys to stand up. We're going to have a nice little dance party, and just like let it all out, kind of thing. So I'll throw on like party rock anthem or something like that, like a feel good like dance music.
Yeah,
and just let them have some fun while I'm doing it. And then I'll turn my camera back on, and I'll be dancing for like 10 or 15 seconds, and then I'll turn it all off. I'll say, all right, let's get going. So.
All right. So I'm actually really glad I asked that question, because when you first described this, you did not share that it was done in a group setting and or in an individual setting. So I'm really glad to hear that it's done in a group settings. My question around that, I think, is if you've got a group of, say, 4 or 5 people / couples, and you're trying to go through this exercise, each one of their responses may be different. So how do you build upon the answer for each individual within a group setting?
In a group setting, the way I have my groups set up is I have every week there's one teaching call and there's one support call, right? Mm-hmm. So during the teaching call is where I would actually do this with someone. Now, I'm only doing it with one person at a time.
Got it. Okay.
Yep.
So the teaching call is individual, or the teaching call is a group? I just said
teaching calls group.
Okay, so you've got everybody present, but you are doing this exercise with one individual or couple at a time. Got it.
And I'll do it with them. And the reason I do it in front of everyone is to give them an example of what this looks like and how it's done.
Sure.
And then if I have time, I might do it with the second person, kind of thing. But then anyone I didn't get to in the group during the teaching call, I then give them a workbook that I created that helps them walk through it with their partner or by themselves. Mm-hmm. And I say, that's your homework. Get it done before our next support call. And then we'll go through that. We'll see what you came up with, and we'll fine tune things on our support call.
Perfect.
And then I'm able to knock everyone out.
Wonderful. So you have a workbook that goes along with this as well.
For the group program, yes. With one-on-one, it's not necessary.
Sure. Yep. Okay. Yep. Wonderful. I like that. And did that get created? We could talk about this at another time. Maybe we'll do like a whole thing on curriculum. But I'm just curious, did that get created as almost like a note-taking guide for yourself? And then you were able to, since you do this so often, you're able to do it without anything like that. And then you could create that form and give it to the people who didn't get a chance to do it in group?
No, I just created it in the mindset that someone was going to do it on their own. And then I was going to look over it. Kind of thing. Okay,
very good. Yep. Well, what I just offered might be a tip for somebody to do for their own curricula someday. So
yeah, who knows? Who knows?
All right. Yeah. Very good. So those are the only questions I had. I just wanted to, before you go into some of the other details, I just wanted to say this is, I think, a really, really good exercise for people. I love that you've been able to adapt it for the group, and that you have thought about a way to have somebody go through it even without you doing the actual questioning for them. Because if they can facilitate it on their own, or have, like you said, their partner help them with that, that's where they're going to be able to take it and then apply it to the different areas of their life as well. So I think that's just a really great thing that you have for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I do want to wrap this up by saying that there's a reason as to why we do this, and then also an application as to how to actually integrate it into their lives. Right. Okay. So the reason for this is there's 2 reasons. One is because there will be a point in a person's journey that something happens that pushes them down in a dark, vulnerable, exhausted, impatient place. whether it be external, like something happened to them, or whether it be internal with like a feeling that they're having, they will have a low point in their journey. And that's where 99% of people give up. And they go back to doing things the way they used to because it was familiar and it was quote unquote easier and all this other kinds of stuff, right? So this why statement, because it's actually like something that's powerful and it's meaningful and it's something that's worth fighting for, as compared to, I just don't want to be stressed about money. That's something that like helps people keep pushing through those really low moments in their journey, you know? So keeping things going is one of the reasons. And then the other reason too is like, hey, it's also a daily motivator for them. So if you're telling them like, hey, like you should be, you know, plugged into your budget consistently, you should be, you know, spending your money in this way, you know, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. There are going to be moments where a person just doesn't feel like doing those things. And they're going to be like, why do I got to do this? You know? And it's like, well, this is why. This is why. Right? So let's get it done. You know? So it's a daily motivator, but it's also that thing that you can lean on when you need it most, kind of thing. Right? So that's why we do this. And then how to integrate it into their lives. I tell them that I want them to physically write this down. Do not print it up and type it up and print it out, but physically write it down and then post it up somewhere in their home that's like totally in the way. So it could be like a bathroom mirror. It could be their front door. I even have one person put it on their toilet because he was like, I'm using that thing every day, you know? So, but you know, put it somewhere where you're going to see it every day and you're not going to be able to avoid it, kind of thing. And then my only thing is I say, I have one requirement for you. You are to read that statement out loud, verbally read it once a day. That's it. It'll take you 5 to 10 seconds, but do that every day moving forward. And I also tell them I want them to take a picture of it and send it to me once it's done, so I know that they actually did it. And if they actually do that, it's going to be burned into their brain for when they really need that the most. And they're also going to be way more motivated and inspired and taking action on a daily basis to get things moving, you know? So that's why it's one of my most favorite ones, is because it's like, to me, I see a change in people once we get past like the what and the how of the finances and we really get into the why. I see like an actual shift in people's approach and their actions and even their attitude toward the whole journey. So that's one of the exercises that are my favorites.
That's awesome. And I know that you really want to move to the next one, and I want you to, and I do not want to derail the conversation, but you talking actually brought up a question. And, so I'm hoping you can answer this quickly. It's kind of a deeper question. And so if we need to table it for another time, just let me know. As you were talking, Cody, you mentioned that, helping them figure out why they want to do something rather than just what or how. Have you ever had somebody share with you, let's just say they say, with your example, that their goal is to become debt free. In doing this exercise to try to help them develop the why or discover the why, have you ever found that their what is actually not what they want to do? And if so, have you been able to help them recraft that thing that they thought that they wanted to do, but after doing some digging, found out that there was actually something else that they wanted to do instead?
So what you're asking is like, have I found that they actually want to focus on something else other than the debt?
Yes. Or that maybe, they want to focus on the debt for a certain reason, but the whole idea of getting rid of all of their debt or, being allergic to debt, as some people might say, isn't really what they want. It's just something that was kind of thrown out there as an idea. And they're kind of like, yeah, I like that. But then after you dig into the actual why, that what no longer fits that why, and you're able to help them shift.
Yeah, I would say that the closest thing that I've experienced with that is sometimes, like, so even if, for example, last night I did this exercise with someone.
Okay.
And their answer to the first question was, I want to buy a new house for our family and I don't want to be stressed out about money. So the what was actually the house.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so we talked about that a little bit. And, through that conversation, she then validated that, like, hey, in order for us to even have a shot of doing this, we need to get this cleaned up first.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like I shifted the conversation from just the debt to the debt and the house. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So in her case, maybe it needed to get cleaned up, but it didn't have to completely go away necessarily for her to be able to pursue the dream of the house. And you're able to help coach her through those different scenarios and see what it is that she actually wants, and then why she wants it, and then how to get it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yep.
What's the second favorite exercise you've got going on?
Yes, the second one. This one is, I would say, probably more unique. I don't know if many financial coaches are doing things like this.
Okay.
And it's also my favorite one that I do, period.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why in a second. But essentially what I do is I will talk to these people and I'll say, hey, I want to do this exercise with you guys. And I really want to focus on like your 10 out of 10 life. So we've obviously been focusing on our finances. And that's one area that we're going to talk about. But I also want to talk about your marriage, your kids, your health, your career, your living situation, your faith, like whatever it may be. And I want to talk about every single one of those. And I want you to be very specific and tell me what the 10 out of 10 life looks like in each of those areas. Now, I'm not talking about 8 out of 10. I'm not talking about 9 out of 10. I'm talking about 10 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then we'll go through those different areas. So, with the finances, I'll ask them, like, what's the 10 out of 10 look like? And they'll give me some, like, again, surface level answer. And I'll say, okay, but I need specifics. So how much are you making? Exactly how much do you have in your sleep well at night fund? Exactly how much, debt do you have? What kind, like all these kinds of things, right? Like, what are you going to be able to do? Exactly. Where are you going to be able to go? Exactly. Right. And then like, even like with their living situation, I'm like, how many square feet's the house? How many bedrooms? How many baths? Do you have land? Is there a pond in the backyard? Is there a wraparound porch? What color is the house? Like all these different types of things, right? So very, very specific in all these different kind of key pillar areas of their life. And then after we kind of talk about all that kind of stuff, I say, okay, great. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to throw on some music for 10 minutes. And the music of choice, if you literally just like YouTube or type into Spotify and you type in peaceful meditation music.
Okay.
Just click that one. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And just make sure it's at least 10 minutes long. So what I do is I instruct them. I'm like, we're going to throw on some music for 10 minutes and I'm going to do this with you, but I want you to stand up and we're both going to put ourselves on mute so that we're not distracting each other. Okay. And during that 10 minutes, I want you to talk about this 10 out of 10 life, but in the mindset and in the place that you are currently living it. That it's already happened. That it's not a dream anymore, it's a reality now. So I tell them, I'm like, you are going to be tempted to use phrases like I will, or I'm going to, or, anything like that. Right? Because it's natural, because that's how we usually think. And I'm like, you are not to use those phrases. You are to change them into I am, I have, we are, all those different types of phrases, right?
Present tense. Mm-hmm.
Present tense, right? And I tell them, like, I only have 2 rules, or 3 rules. That's one of them, and that's the most important one. Rule number 2 is that you are to close your eyes and keep them closed the entire time. And rule number 3 is that you should, allow your body to get involved into this exercise too. So put your hand on your heart, throw your arms up in the air, do whatever you got to do to physically feel this as well. And I say, you guys got it? And they say, yep, got it. And I say, okay, cool. As soon as you hear this music come in, that's your cue to start. And then the music plays, and that's what they do. And then after the music stops, I bring them back in. I tell them, like, okay, you guys can sit down if you like. And then I just ask them, what came up and how are you feeling? And every single time, Maria, I'm not kidding you, every single time they are like, I felt so at peace. I felt so fulfilled. I felt joy. I felt like anything was possible. I felt proud of myself. And people will even say things like, I actually felt like I was in the moment. So one of the people I did this with recently, she's like, I actually felt like I was at a property in the mountains, and I knew exactly what I was wearing. I knew exactly what kind of coffee I was drinking, in which mug I was drinking it in. I knew what my kids were doing. I knew what my husband and I were talking about, and it felt real. So the purpose of me doing this is because there's something about doing that exercise that almost convinces your brain that you're actually in that moment. You get kind of lost in that. And there's science behind this. Now, I'm not a neuroscientist by any means, but what I do know is that once you're able to convince your brain that that's like actually the reality that you're living in, and if you were to do it on a consistent basis, chances are that's actually the reality that you're going to be living in.
Mm-hmm. Because your actions meet that expectation.
Yeah, it's like a classic like law of attraction kind of thing, right? So, and then I instruct them like, hey, like you should work this into your morning routine kind of thing. Because if you have a client who kind of struggles with seeing that life vision because they're so stuck in the present of working through their current weeds of their finances, doing this is really, really powerful because it allows them to see the bigger picture, but it also allows them to feel the bigger picture. Mm-hmm. And that just, again, motivates them, inspires them, and allows them to take action, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And why this is one of my favorite ones is because, Maria, I'm not kidding you, this very exercise is what gave me everything in my life.
Now, I remember talking about this with you once. Yeah. You described the porch and everything, and right? Like that was, I thought so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, like me being, a person of faith, like I'm not going to say that like this was the only thing that brought me everything in my life. But it definitely is a big part because the house I'm living in is a product of this exercise. The practice that I have is a product of this exercise. The group coaching program that I created was a product of this exercise. The family dynamic that I have was a product of this exercise. My real estate endeavors that I have is a product of this exercise, and so on and so forth. The weight that I lost was a product of this exercise,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like all of these
Mm-hmm.
types of things. So this is like the one exercise that has affected my life so deeply. And I just know that it does the same for other people as well.
Yeah.
And that's why it's probably one of my favorite exercises.
Yeah. Super powerful. I know that doing something like this is a skill. And I'm wondering, how many times have you had somebody who they just have a really hard time actually seeing what you're asking them to see? Like, I'm one of those people, and I know that that's one of the things that takes practice. Like, you actually have to train your brain. There are some people who brain, like, that's what it does. Like, you say red apple and they can immediately physically see a red apple.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are people who are like, I can think about a red apple, but I'm not physically seeing it. So for individuals like that, whose brain is wired a little bit differently, what kinds of results do you get with those people? Or maybe you haven't even asked them if they are those type of people. So that's kind of what I'm wondering about that.
Yeah. So that is why I do it for 10 minutes.
Okay.
I don't do it for anything less than 10 minutes.
Okay.
Sometimes I'll do 12, 13, 14, whatever, but minimum of 10 minutes. And the reason for that is because those first 5 minutes, the person's going to be met with a lot of friction.
Mm-hmm. Good word for it. Yep.
They're gonna be like battling the statements of, like, I'm going to.
Mm-hmm.
They also might be battling just like the surface level stuff. Like they might be battling like, hey, like, I'm gonna have this great house and blah blah blah. And they also might be battling even just picturing it.
Mm-hmm.
But if they know, I'm not just gonna sit here and be frustrated for the next 5 minutes because I'm only halfway through, I might as well just really just let all this go and just fully submerge myself into it. That's where the second 5 minutes is really where it starts to come together for people. And that's also a reason as to why I say close your eyes and, touch your heart, because I need them to be fully submersed in that moment. Because those last 5 minutes, the second half of this exercise, that's where they start talking about not just what the house looks like, but what it means to their family.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they start talking about not just what their bank account looks like, but how they actually feel.
Mm-hmm.
It's the second half that really allows people to step into that. And that's just my experience. Like, I haven't really experienced that with someone to where, like, we got done and I said, hey, how'd it go? And they explained to me. And I haven't experienced someone saying, like, I
just couldn't do it.
I just couldn't do it. Yeah.
No, that's a really good answer.
That's the reason, is because I make it a minimum of 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's a really, really good answer for a question that you didn't know was coming. And I think what it also does is it allows our listeners to know that there's a purpose behind the timing that you used and that there's an actual practical application to that amount of time. So that's really great. One technological question that I have, and I'll be that person who asks, because I'm sure there's at least 1 to 10 listeners right now who are like, yeah, I don't know how to do that either. So I'll just put myself out there and say,
okay,
how do you get the computer to play music for them? Because yes. I would have done a workaround of, just playing it myself. But then you mentioned that you were muted. And so there must be a way. And I feel like you and I have done this before actually here, but I don't know how. So is it a quick walkthrough that you could give our listeners?
Yeah. So, if you're using Zoom,
okay,
this is how you do it. If you're using something else than Zoom, I don't know. Sorry.
Then reach out to Cody and he'll tell you somehow.
Yeah.
Don't ask me.
But if you go to the screen share with Zoom, and then you go to, so you click, share screen, and then, it gives you a bunch of options. You go to the advanced tab. There will be a selection that says share computer audio.
Oh, okay. So even when you mute your microphone, it's not sharing your microphone necessarily. It's just sharing the computer audio, so you can play that while your microphone's muted. All right. Simple enough. Very good. See,
Yep.
at least, you know, I'm listening to the actual details of what you're sharing today. Because I think this is something that people can absolutely use. And I know even if you're not just talking about this, you've talked about sharing your music in other areas as well, like your little dance party that you just talked about for your first exercise. So I think that'll be something useful for everybody.
Yep. So yeah, I just wanted to share a few exercises that don't have anything to do with numbers.
Yeah.
Because I do think that that's where the real magic of coaching
Mm-hmm.
really helps tie everything together, you know, and it actually helps the number sides of things even more, you know. So if you're someone who hasn't explored this side of coaching, maybe give it a shot, see how it goes. I guarantee you it's probably going to feel weird at first, but give it a shot, you know, because I think that you might be surprised as to how you like it, but also how your clients will like it as well.
Amen to that. Very good. Well, thank you for sharing those things. I appreciate it. And I know our listeners do as well. As you guys, I told you at the beginning of this episode, we're going to give you some really great applicable nuggets that you could just start applying right away. And I think that Cody delivered on that promise today. So thanks, Cody.
Yeah, not a problem, guys. So friendly reminder, we appreciate every single one of you who listens to the show. Whether it's your first time listening to the show, whether it's your first time listening because you took a 3-month hiatus from the show and you're back. Hey, we're happy you're back, right? But we just want to say that we appreciate you, and we especially appreciate our every weekers as well. You know, people who listen to us every week. We even had one person say something in the Facebook group, and she was like, "I'm an every weeker," and it's like, yeah, that's right, you are. You know, so you know, you're probably listening to this right now, and she's like, "That's me." So we appreciate you too, and you know, we love doing this, and we'll be back next week because now that I've talked about a few of my favorite exercises, I told Maria I'm going to hold her to it. So next week we're going to talk about some of her favorite exercises. So be sure to check that one out as well because Maria has some good ones. And we'll see you guys next week, and we'll hang out then.
Sounds good. Have a good week, guys. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Financial Coaches Podcast, brought to you by New Money Habits and Sizemore Financial Coaching. Submit your questions to our hosts by emailing podcast@newmoneyhabits.com. Be sure to subscribe to be notified of future episodes and join our growing group of like-minded coaches on Facebook. And until next time, happy coaching. Music provided by Summer School.